Okay, and the title of this talk is Redistricting Reform, Why It's Needed and What Happens Next. Our presenters today are Rich, Rafferty, and Charles James. And you want to take it away?
We do.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you, everybody. Let me introduce first Charles. Charles is our Lehigh Valley coordinator. The group we're talking about is Fair Districts PA. We are a statewide organization, single mission statewide organization, started by, now a quick show of hands, who's ever heard of a group called Fair Districts PA? Oh, you're lying. But the more important thing is we do have very not so great name recognition, but we are part of the League of Women Voters. We were started, this is a project started by the League of Women Voters back in 2015. As perhaps you can read on that slide. But we are single mission. Charles is our Lehigh Valley coordinator. I am coming from Montgomery County, and I help out in Lehigh, in Bucks County, Delaware, in Philadelphia, wherever I need to go. I've been a volunteer since 2017. We're all on pay. Charles joined a couple years ago, I guess, right? Feels like more? So it feels like more, I'm sure. But he's been great. We've done great work. We are all about one issue, which is redistricting. That is every 10 years, the drawing of electoral maps, which are highly, highly important in how our government functions. We are not about Washington. We don't do Washington. We only do Harrisburg. We are focused exclusively on Harrisburg because, as you're going to see, who draws the maps? It's folks in Harrisburg who draw the maps. So when I joined, I had recently retired full-time, doing a number of things part-time. Important to get out of the house. And one of the things I learned was I knew nothing about redistricting. And that's because my wife had encouraged me to go to a Fair Districts presentation at a local high school. And I thought I was, well-read, keeping in touch with what's happening with governments and everything. And I knew nothing. I wasn't sure who my state rep was, Harrisburg. Wasn't sure who my state senator was, Harrisburg. And I knew nothing about the fact that where I live, if you want to get a picture of where I live, it's just follow 476, kind of live in that Plymouth Township, Plymouth Valley area at the end of the hard ride down there. So, but I knew nothing in the fact that where I lived in Montgomery County had been gerrymandered 3 times. My street had been gerrymandered 3 times, and I, like 99.5% of fellow Americans here, just kind of cruising by, blissfully ignorant of what's actually happening behind the scenes. But this is why we're going to do all about redistricting, and it's going to require your endurance through a basic but brief civics test, all right, to understand how things work, because it's really important to understand how redistricting works. Now, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about how it works only in PA. If you follow the headlines, you see that your president is making announcements to say, well, we need to guarantee more of friendlies in Congress, so let's start redrawing maps in friendly states and da-da-da-da-da, So redistricting usually gets in the news, not that frequently, but it gets in the news and never in a positive way. But you'll see what we're going to talk about, how it works today, why it's a problem, and we're not here to kvetch, and then talk about from a Fair Districts and League of Women's point of view, what are we proposing? For reforms, we've got legislation, and where do we stand with legislation? And then we'll end it by taking a look at what's happening with your state legislators from the Lehigh Valley. I'm assuming everyone here is within 20 miles? Outside agitators? You're from? Philadelphia. Oh, exactly. You want them to stay? What do you want to do? Okay. Too late now. But the idea is it's relevant across the state. Nobody knows nothing. Thank you for the invitation. Thank you for your patience coming up to go through it. And I certainly will be happy to answer every question. The stuff I'm going to show you, particularly with how it works today, don't feel bad. 5 minutes after I leave, you're going to kind of forget everything you just saw. You're going to think you know it, but you're going to forget. But if you take a look at the Fair Districts PA website, we have big print, pictures, the works that make it easy to understand what's the problem, how it works, and what our proposals are to make it easier. But this is local. What we do everywhere we go across the state is we talk to folks like you, and we're going to be asking for your help because it's all about what is the position with your state legislators, state rep, state senate, and where do they stand today, and how can they help, and how can you help them? Engagement. This is what we're all about. It's not just blah, blah, blah. It's engagement. I had never done this before. The very first time I joined this and went to a local state legislator, I actually went with a small group. I was absolutely intimidated, figuring that state legislators know everything, and I know nothing, and I'm going to embarrass myself. The good news is that I've talked to 29, 30 state legislators over the years in Southeast PA. Most state legislators, A, are good people. Number two is that they care about one or two things. And they want legislation or reforms for the one or two things they care about. But it rarely happens that the stuff that they care about ever gets any kind of attention in the state capitol, so they have to endure all the other stuff that they know very little about and put up with it. And particularly if you're in the minority, your stuff never sees the light of day, and your opinion doesn't count. That's the real world life of our state legislators. Very, very little. A real show of hands here before we show names in a while. If I asked you today, how many of you folks could confidently answer, I know who my state rep is and I know who my state senator is? This is a dangerous group. We like it. All right, Charles, let's go. We'll take a look at how it works right now. One page. So don't worry about it. One page. And I want you to look at the purple. If you're colorblind, it's the thing that says 1%. Our maps, and what we're talking about are the congressional maps, the people we send to Washington. We got a couple of know-it-alls here. How many folks from Pennsylvania represent us down in Washington? Do we have a number? 17. Back in 1950, before any of us were born, we had 36. How about that? So Pennsylvania is on, a bit of a decline here, even though we are the 5th most populous state in the country per the 2020 census. And everything we're going to talk about when it comes to redistricting is triggered by the census. So when's the next redistricting cycle coming up? And that has a number, a year number? Yeah, 2030 is 2030 begins the census process. It usually ends noisily. It's early 2031. And in Pennsylvania, as in all other states, we're required by federal law to redraw congressional maps. In Pennsylvania, we're also required to redraw our state legislature maps as well. So that's what happens, and historically it happens very quietly, very quickly, and we all find out after the fact. But let's take a look. Easier to start on the right-hand side are 17 congressional seats. Who creates the maps? The 1%. Amazingly, we have 50 state senators in Harrisburg today, and we have a whopping 203 state reps. That's 253 state legislators covering both chambers, the entirety of Pennsylvania. But the 1% represents the less than 1% of the total population of Pennsylvania. That is leadership. The party leaders in the PA House, where the state reps are, and the party leaders in the state Senate, where your 50 state senators are. They control this process. On the congressional side, drawing the maps, as they did in 2021, and they will do again in 2031, we hope not, is really controlled by the majority party. So we're talking about two people who will control through a pure legislative process how our maps for Washington will be redrawn. It's done quietly, it's done purely through a legislative process. No input from citizens, no outside expertise, no public hearings, nothing. It is pure legislation. And in 2011, we didn't know this, of course, is that the legislation for the new congressional maps to go into place, starting with the 2012 elections, were done without any maps. Don't worry about it. We'll fill in the details later. But we passed legislation. This is your legislation. This is our world in Pennsylvania right now. So 2 leaders from the majority party in Harrisburg will control the drawing of our 16 or 17 congressional maps come 2031. And you'll have no say. The only precautions or protections, if you will, are the Federal Voting Rights Act. That's really the only legality behind how the maps are drawn. Does anyone remember there were some famous maps, the goofy kicking Donald Duck? That was amazing. Well, I live 100 feet from that district. And that was the example of pure abuse. Because we can, we will, and they do. They just do. And I lived 100 feet from it because it come cruising. That district, for what was the old 7th Congressional District, started at the border of Chester and Lancaster County, cruised eastward. You would think, heading for the airport. We're getting close to Philadelphia Airport. Stopped. In the search for additional voters of one kind, we drew north. We zigzagged. We went all over the place in it was like a snowplow going through, looking for enough votes of Party A. I'm not going to do the R&D thing because they're both bad, believe it. That it finally snaked its way, almost came across Montgomery County where I live. I ducked, didn't know it, but I ducked, and the snowplow came 1 block ahead of me, scoured up whatever they could there on their way to the edge of Bucks County. It was an amazing piece of chicanery that went down by your Pennsylvania legislature. Because they can. And it didn't go away right away. It stayed in place for a number of years. And it worked because the party that drew it got their party man to represent that district for a number of cycles. Because they can, they do. That's simply how it works. So that's a congressional. It's really pretty basic. We have no say. Your legislature in Harrisburg, the majority party draws it. They throw it up there. We want to vote. Oh, the majority raised their hand. Done. It's simple as that. Now, the judicial process kicks in when lawsuits begin, of course, but that's really how it is, period, in Pennsylvania. On the other side, the 1%. And remember that the state legislators, deep down, don't really care about the interests of individual legislators. They're really just looking for, the congressional legislators. They just want to make sure that their party, if they're driving the majority, win, regardless of who it is. So Charlie Dent, a former representative up this way years ago, he was there in 2011 when maps were being drawn over the place. He was super unhappy because he got drawn out where he lives. So he raised his hand, made a couple phone calls. Guys, can you move the lines a little, a quarter mile more to scoop up where I live? No, don't worry about it, Charlie. If not you, it'll be somebody else. Sit down, we'll get back to you. They don't care. As long as the majority party, their party wins. That's how it works. On the who creates the maps on the House side, it's a lot more complicated. It's your Pennsylvania Constitution. Show of hands here. How many folks remember getting education in high school on our Pennsylvania Constitution? We didn't. Anyone be aware that we have a Constitution in Pennsylvania? Yeah, you were one of these goody two-shoes probably. So, but we do. We have it. And the good news is, if you need to understand how it works, it's about this, how the maps are drawn for the 253 state seats in Harrisburg. The language is about that big on your PA Constitution. Article 2, Section 16, a couple paragraphs. Couple of sentences, filled with nouns and adjectives that are free for interpretation by the folks who draw them. It's a beautiful process. It was created in 1968, this process, so many of us were still alive and oblivious to it then, much like we're all pretty much oblivious to it now. But this is how it went down. You'll see some particularly key adjectives: compact, contiguous, down below. unless absolutely necessary. What does all that mean? There's no meat behind any of it. There are no metrics. There are no standards. There's nothing behind it. They are free for interpretation by the folks who draw the 253 maps. They are really interested because the state legislators drawing state district maps. They are really keen on this one because it's their jobs and keeping it. So who draws it? Again, we're back to the 1%. The 1% meaning this very small, these couple of legislators representing really less than 1% of the 13 million Pennsylvanians. The LRC, mouthful, you'll forget it, it's a Legislative Reapportionment Commission. They draw the 253 maps. It's made up of the two political leaders from the Republicans, House and Senate, the two political leaders or party leaders from the Democrats, and then the all-important, tie-breaking fifth seat, the chairperson, and they're always the tiebreaker, is appointed by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. So that's why Pennsylvania Supreme Court elections are always a big deal. And they're certainly huge because they assign and appoint the tiebreaker. This is the process they came up with in 1968. We either weren't alive or we were kids and not paying any attention to it. But this is what they came up with it. This is our world today. 4 politicos and an appointee by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court to sit in that 5th chair. That 5-person LRC. Don't worry about the Legislative Reapportionment Commission. It's LRC. They're the ones who draw the maps. And if the Supreme Court, based in Harrisburg, is friendly or unfriendly, it has a huge impact on how the maps are going to be drawn for the state districts. So they have nothing to do with congressionals. The congressional is pure legislation controlled by the majority party, whoever is the majority party at the time it comes to draw the maps. But on the drawing the 253 maps, it all comes back to this 5-person commission who's in charge of drawing the maps. Okay? Go ahead.
Are there court cases based on the laws?
Say it again. Are there what?
Are there court cases?
Yeah, and we'll get to that. Yeah, we'll get to that. But if this is all built, as you're suggesting, this is all built for litigation. It really is built for litigation. There's always somebody. One party is always unhappy. One party is always aggrieved. One party is always accusing the other of malicious intent and malpractice and prejudice, etc. But there are no protections on the state district maps. Again, it's the interpretation, compact and contiguous. No splits unless absolutely necessary. Wide open for interpretation. Oh, cynic, come on. Come on. He's saying it's BS. You have beloved legislators out in Harrisburg who have already drawn the maps. Don't worry about it. They don't wait till the last minute. There's always maps versions A, B, and C in their pockets ready to go, believe me. The next page then, all right? So that's it. That's your civics lesson right there. All right, so we try to make it local wherever we go and talk about, all right, what happened? What's the situation in Lehigh Valley? So there's 2 counties here. And the first thing we'll take a look at is the State House. A little bit hard to read, but there's numbers. There are some rules or some laws there. Each state rep, your state rep, represents about 65,000 people. Not citizens, not residents, not this or that. 65, oh, come on in. You have to sit up front too, that's worse. That's 65,000 people, roughly, based on the census went down, 13 million Pennsylvanians, almost to the number, were counted. 203 divided by into 13,000, you do the math, right? So about 65,000 people are required to be represented by an individual state rep. So we took a look at it from Fair Districts. When the new maps became finalized in early 2022, we were hell-bent. We've been banging away left and right, saying no more abuses, no more disgraceful behavior, et cetera, et cetera. When the new maps came down, we took a look at, and here's Lehigh County. Lehigh County population per the census was about 375,000 people. And I don't have to tell you, Lehigh Valley is a bellwether. It is a spotlight area for all elections coming forward. You guys, if you don't know it, believe it, because you are. So, but we took a look at, okay, what's going on here? And we said, geez, okay, 375 represents 65, should be about 6 House or State House seats. Not too bad. And we got 7. And if you look way down below in 131, which is at the border of Lehigh and Bucks and a little bit of Montgomery, that's 131 down there. That one really is the worst case of splits and multi-county, multi-township. And again, the key phrase that you saw from the Pennsylvania Constitution on the earlier slide was a geopolitical entity or district. What does that mean? That usually means counties, townships, boroughs, cities. It doesn't necessarily mean school districts, even though a lot of people want that to be. But what does that mean? So they're always looking for unreasonable or outrageous splits of any kind done for one reason, purely partisan, to carve people up. But we looked at this based on the behavior and frankly the good work of the appointed LRC commissioner, who was a gentleman, a former dean of the University of Pittsburgh Law School. He really was, in many ways, wonderful in the sense of anti-political. But we were generally okay from a fair district's point of view because we were really hell-bent on making sure it's better than it was before. Though we did note down below that Allentown was a lost district. We were actually fighting and advocating very much for what we call majority-minority districts, where we thought made sense. I'm coming from Montgomery County, and I knew nothing. Montgomery County has 2 poor and brown cities in it. Lots of leafy suburbs, lots of people doing very, very well, and then 2 anomalies. One is Norristown, and the other is Pottstown. Both had gotten chopped up in the prior redistricting because they could, and they did. So when you get sliced and diced, your representation goes to hell. And that's what we were fighting really hard for, because when townships or boroughs, cities, whatever it may be, get unreasonably sliced up, your representation in Harrisburg or perhaps in Washington really gets diminished in a major way. So we were fighting for that. And your PA Constitution says no unreasonable or unnecessary geopolitical splits unless absolutely necessary, whatever the hell that means. And that's the world we live in today. So generally speaking, we were okay. Representative McKenzie down in 131 is the most carved up. She has a little slice of Montgomery County. She has a lower chunk of Lehigh County, and she bleeds a little bit across the county line into Northampton. But our problem was we kvetched enough with Allentown. We thought Allentown, because it's very much poor and brown in major parts of the city, was an opportunity for a Latino representation, which they did not have. And there was infighting, there was all kinds of stuff going on. It didn't happen for a lot of reasons, which we don't have to belabor here right now. But generally speaking, what went down here, and we're going to get back to these names at the bottom at the end of our show here, but we were generally okay with how the new maps were drawn. We complained about Allentown to the LRC. We were told to shut up and sit down, literally. How's that? But we're done through the internet, not in person. Next slide. All right, anyone here from Northampton? Okay, we got you covered here. So we're trying to work both sides, because Lehigh Valley to outsiders is viewed with both counties, even though you may not think that. But it is viewed by a few political leaders that we've talked about, that you'll hear about in a few moments about that. Northampton, same deal. 65,000 was the number to cover. 312 was the census population for Northampton County. And again, both numbers went up on the census, Lehigh County and Northampton County, and the expectation is they're going to increase more come the next cycle. So we looked at this again and said, okay, what do we got here? And again, down below, except for Representative McKenzie in 131, generally okay. They kind of kept it very, very similar to what it was before. The R's got their safe districts, the D's got their safe districts, and we marched on from there. No big deal, no big change, but that's what happened. You can see we highlight some of the splits. We always take a good look at, all right, who got hosed a little bit here by getting carved up into two or more. And believe me, it happens all the time where townships, small townships of 10, 12,000 people get sliced into 2 or 3 state rep districts. And nobody knows about it until it's too late. And then it's too late. That's how it works.
I just noticed something. You missed a district up in Northampton County. There's actually 7. There's, it looks like it's the one, what is that, the 133rd?
Yeah, a little bit up there.
Yeah.
No, 131's over on the right
The
side.
blue one, the one with Gene McNeil, that one
Yeah.
was in the Northampton part of Bethel.
Now, see, this guy's good because I had to do it on purpose. He doesn't believe me. Yeah, she believes it, but it's okay.
Sure, it's entirely
But it's okay. She's mostly Lehigh. She's totally Lehigh.
okay.
But no, I always leave one mistake in to see if anyone's paying attention. That wasn't it. Okay, but it's okay. I come to be belittled and humbled here, so it's cool. All right, so there's the State House. Generally speaking, because there was a lot of input, and with that 5-person commission, because the chairperson, frankly, allowed and wanted lots of input from regular folks, advocates, as well as legislators coming in and fighting for their area or their district. The House went down a little bit better as far as where fair districts is concerned. Did we do a better job per the soft language of the PA Constitution? Were we thrilled with it? It was okay. We gave it a B- because of some lost opportunities. But the House R's were very unhappy with how it went down. And we'll talk about that later. Next, let's talk about the state Senate. And this was the one that was, by any definition, was a disgrace. Remember this 50, is that right, 50? State Senate, is that what I said? You sure? You take what I say without hesitation. I like it. I like it. No, I was going to use it in God We Trust, but I'm not doing that with this group. Anyway, here we go with state Senate districts. 50, remember? 50 seats, lots of fighting. This, by name, look at that sophisticated purple font there, all right? Buddy Mander. What happened was when your LRC got together in late 21, early 2022, to come to present, listen to testimony, and then finalize the 50 state Senate districts for Pennsylvania. Day one, they're all on TV, the boring PCN channel, everybody watches that. Boy, it's hard to stay awake. And every time I turn it on, they're always at Gettysburg, and it's always either day 1, day 2, or day 3 of the battle. And there's always a bunch of old guys with pot bellies hanging around the ranger, hanging on every word, and the poor wives that are just hanging on. It's 94 degrees, by the way. And that lecture's not going to be done for another 3.5 hours. So anyway, I changed the channel then at that point. But it was on PCN. Day 1 was the introduction of your Legislative Reapportionment Commission, your LRC, the 5-person. Introductions, day 1, we got to know who are these people. They don't know who these people are, right? Nobody knows. But this is your leadership. These are the people driving and running Harrisburg, not the governor, the legislature. And lastly, the appointed 5th-person chair. Anyway, day 2 came for more TV testimony and speeches and everything. The 2 senators representing the 5-person commission didn't show up. Day 3, TV time, 2 senators didn't show up. Day 4, the same thing happened. Day 5, the 2 senators showed up along with the other 3 members, and the 2 senators announced, we're good. We met, and we've come to agreement on the new 50 state Senate districts for the next 10 years. Chairperson, who didn't send out, search dogs to find the 2 senators in the earlier days, kind of did, really? You're good? And he asked them a few questions, and he finally said, Okay, if the 2 Senate representatives are good on the new maps for the next 10 years, let's vote. Anyway, the 2 House members abstained. Thank you. They don't care. They only care about their world. And 3 hands went up. The chairperson said, because we have agreement with the 2 Senate representatives, we're done. The 50 state Senate maps are done. We're good. And from this point forward, we will only concentrate on testimony and finalizing the 203 state rep maps. That's what happened. Lisa Boscola, who's been a longtime friend, senator from a big chunk of Northampton County, went ballistic that day. She has been working with us for reform. This is your process. This is your Pennsylvania Constitution in action. She had been fighting against this, and she went ballistic online, and she wrote all kinds of great diatribes. They're really good. To no avail. Doesn't matter. The LRC decision is final. And remember, I showed you, the governor has no say. The rank and file have no say. Only those 2 reps from the Senate, only those 2 reps from the House on this 5-person commission. Speak for everybody, including us. And down they go on the maps. So we called it a buddy mander. This was, and it was geared, both sides agreed to basically keep the maps intact for the most part, to preserve the status quo. Both obviously took a look at the next 5 years, the next 5 election cycles, said, where are the risks in the decade we're in now? At the time, it was 28-22 R to D. After the 22 election, 28-22. Basically, everything stayed the same. So that's what happened. They preserved the status quo. Both sides, leadership on the Senate side from both sides, decided the status quo was better than taking a risk of maybe my party getting into a worse or weaker position. All right? So up here we have Senator Miller, Senator Coleman, and Senator Boscola. Only Senator Boscola spoke out. And she had some great rant. She was spot on with her observations. She was disgusted. Senator Coleman, who's over on the number 16 there, District 16, he was running for the very first time post new maps. So he was perhaps a beneficiary. And you may recall, anybody remember Senator Pat Brown? State Senator Pat Brown. Okay. Anyway, Charles, I don't know if you can see it, the little green finger. Who do you think lives in that little green finger? It's Pat Brown. You're 30 minutes, so he didn't have to move. So he said, all he did was, hey man, make sure you get these 3 streets covered. And that's what they do. I'm covered. Life is good. This is how it works. And remember, we know nothing until well after the fact. In fact, most of us don't even, if we vote, the only time we notice it was, geez, didn't our, who's on, I don't recognize that name on the ballot. Who is it now? What the hell happened? Didn't it used to be? That's how folks find out. And that's just the people who vote. The rest of the folks who are just floating in the ether, who don't pay attention, don't vote, know nothing. Maybe they don't care. But this is how your state Senate went down. We said, disgrace, a buddy mander, but thank you, because this helps us exemplify why reform is needed. So your R's and D's participated equally in the buddy mander on the Senate side. Next slide. Remember, you're going to forget most of this. So don't get tense that you're worried about what you're going to do. This is what we do. Part of what we do, the League of Women Voters, we said, okay, how is our state legislature performing? Again, the news media is only uber focused on Washington conflict, melodrama, personalities, headlines and noise of the day versus state capitals. I learned, again, somebody who thought he paid attention, but what I learned is what happens and what impacts us on an everyday basis. What happens at local government and state government has a far more direct impact on our quality of life. It really does. What exactly does Washington do for us? Keep us out of war? That's a good thing. Taxes, okay. But think about when you go home, or after I go home, think about what exactly is Washington doing for us on a day-to-day? Sending money that we sent to them, okay, maybe. But what happens local? Who's picking up your trash? Who's taking care of the snowplows? Who's doing all those little things? Police, fire, et cetera. Think about all the day-to-day. Local, state government. Your state government has an outsized influence on all of these things that we highlighted. And we study lots of third-party surveys that look at how states perform on these key areas, like safety, crime, and education. Big deal right now, right, in Pennsylvania. Huge bulk, the bulk of the money locally comes from either local, property taxes or state money that comes to fund school districts. Healthcare, big deal, obviously. We're getting older. Pennsylvania remains one of the top 5. Too many old folks. Can't you keep moving to Florida and give them a headache down there? But it's a big deal. We're an older state. That's just who we are. But all of these things, without belaboring the point, Pennsylvania's in competition. This is how I view it. We're in competition with 49 other states. How are we doing? Not so great. 44 of 67 counties on the last census lost population. If you lived in rural Schuylkill or Tioga or Cambria or some of the other counties, you're living in a very popular and destination area now, whether you like it or not. But what happens, 44 of 67 counties lost population. Who's left? Are the young people staying in those counties? No, they're leaving. Are they coming here? We hope. Are they staying in Pennsylvania? We hope. But we don't want them to leave. We have a problem here in this state because are we competing effectively against the other states which are growing in population, growing in political influence, growing in wealth? That's our problem. And our argument here right now, based on all of these different surveys and studies that we've taken, and we go deep with lots of well-heeled, well-funded, nonpartisan analytics groups, is we're not doing good. We're simply not doing good or good enough. So.
Yeah, so first of all, I'd like to point out about the infrastructure. I believe that we're one of the worst states. You've probably seen in the newspaper about truckers. Also about economy, even though we have slightly more people than Illinois has a bigger GDP than we do, which means we must have more rural, poorer areas.
Not necessarily. We have a slightly larger population. But the reality is, because there's no what I call heat and light on state legislators on Harrisburg. Tomorrow, if you read news online, raise your hand if in the next week, how many articles have you read in the last week about what's happening in the state capitals? Now, there's a little bit more focus because the budgets are floating still, basic stuff. But the reality is on a day-to-day basis, there's next to nothing of what's happening in state capitals. I grew up in Philadelphia. I live very close to Philadelphia. They focus on City Hall in Philadelphia often. And you get the noise and news and outrage and drama from Washington. But what's happening in Harrisburg? Believe me, you get very little coverage. We think Spotlight PA is an excellent source. We recommend that subscription because they do focus almost exclusively on Harrisburg. But outside of that, these legislators know that there's very little coverage. No big deal. No real pressure. It's good. And that's the problem because we're living in a state that's in perpetual slow decline. Next. Okay. And your last phrase, no urgency. There's no urgency because there's no real pressure. All right. Next slide. We're almost through the part of kvetching about the problem. All right. Question. Go ahead.
Is Lehigh Valley losing or gaining population?
You're gaining population.
Yes, more quickly than the state average.
Yeah, you are. It is. What's happening is that if I was 20, 30 something, I would be, and where I grew up in Philadelphia in Montgomery County, I'd be looking, geez, where can I find cheaper real estate? What town or neighborhood can I go to ruin, and bring in bulldozers and more development and broaden the roads and screw up for the folks who have been there for decades? In Montgomery, but you are, Lehigh, what I'll call the Lehigh Valley, is slowly gaining in population. Some of that is an exodus, but if you take a look at where's the growth, where's population growing, it's the southeast. There's no getting around it. Allegheny County lost a little population, the Pittsburgh area. Southwest PA, which used to be a powerhouse, is not. It's losing. So we're gaining population. I was just up talking to folks like you up in the Scranton-Wilkes-Barre area. They're slowly losing population. It's all coming our way. And the first stop is the Lehigh Valley. So we're encouraging them. Voices in Bucks, Montgomery, and Chester County are saying, hey, go to Lehigh Valley, ruin their neighborhoods with more development, more people, more taxes, and leave us alone as much as you can. So, but yeah, you cannot. Lehigh Valley is almost ground zero for electoral politics. It is. Whether you want it to be or not, it is. Because the perception of voters on the move, purple voting results in many cases, some close elections. So you're going to continue to get it. Great, thank you, Charles. Okay. So here we go. So let's move. We're done kvetching, and we're just going to talk about what are we doing. Fair districts, we're all about reform. So, and we're doing reform through legislation, bills with your reform bills in Harrisburg right now. So what we're saying is this. Our position is this. We don't want the legislature or the courts being our PA Supreme Court. The PA Supreme Court redrew the 2018 congressional maps. Even though they were very clear, we don't want to do this, we're not experts. It's the legislature's job in Harrisburg, and they failed. So the state Supreme Court hired their consultants who came in over a weekend and drew maps. In 2018, it says, okay, throw out the goofy kicking Donald Duck and some of the other atrocities, and here's the new maps that went in play for the election starting in 2018. And remember, these districts go poof once the new redistricting cycle begins. And again, in 2022, they chose the congressional maps one more time. We don't want Supreme Court, our PA Supreme Court, drawing congressional or any maps. And they've been very clear saying, we don't have the expertise, it's your job. But it's all set up to do that again if nothing changes. And lots of other things here. We said the 2022 state senators, a buddy matter, the 1%, the couple of guys, it's always guys, by the way, a couple of guys drew the maps, and they're poised to do it again. And we'll be naming names in a few minutes here, okay? Because that's what we have to do. Here's our proposal. Right now, nothing's changed. Our reforms aren't there yet, but we want to end what we call the inherent conflict of interest. This is politicians drawing political maps to achieve political objectives. We go everywhere. I'll go. I got an invite to talk to 6th and 7th grade girls at a very elite private school. And I said, sure, I'll go, because this was down in a rich area of Montgomery County. And I used to drive by this fabulous Victorian-era mansion, and that's where the school was. Sure, I'll go, because I was curious about the architecture and what's inside. So I presented to the girls, who, of course, were well-prepared with questions, but I asked them a question. I've explained the situation where the legislators are drawing the maps without any oversight. What do you think that's like? And a couple of girls said, right on. It said it's like us, the students, formulating and deciding what questions will be on a test. That's kind of like it is. It is. We know we're going to draw the maps, particularly if we're in the majority. We're going to draw the maps because you know how it's going to wind up come election cycles. And they can, and they do. And it's an outrage because nobody knows about the fact that this is how it's currently set up. So we're saying that's a conflict of interest. It's baked in. So we're saying, and keep in mind, Independent Redistricting Commission, and you'll see the other two. We have a three-legged, so let's go, we'll jump right in here. We're almost done. All right. Okay, careful. So this is the number one, is we have what we call our three legs of our platforms. Our two bills are HB 31 and SB 131. Psst. You should write that down. HB 31, SB 131. I know you'll remember it, I'm sure. But the big deal is we're taking the politicians out of the process and doing what some other states have done, which is an independent redistricting commission. A one-time job, paid positions. It's made up of 11 members 4 from the Party A, the one who has the largest registration. The next one, click, would be the second largest. Sorry, that covered your R's and D's, your D's and R's. So they get 4 of the 8 seats. And look at us. Next one. 3 seats for independents. Where, if you take a look at the last 10, 20 years, where has the largest growth of registration, voter registration occurred? Is it with D's and R's? No. It's with independent. Now, there's not one party called independent. It's a huge umbrella. There's a lot. There are a lot of single issue parties out there, but there's 50 plus parties out there that call themselves or are labeled independent. So there's no cohesion there, but there are well over 1 million, I think it's 1.3 million, 1.4 million registered Pennsylvanians who are not an R or a D, and we're making room for them because they need to be heard. They get 0 representation, 0. Now, if you're one of them, it's time to give up and say, okay, I'm going to throw myself at the feet of these other 2 parties and say, I was wrong, you were right all along. Or you can say, screw that, and we'll come up with a better way. And we think this is a better way for that. And one last pop there. So, and look who we don't have on the commission. One more click. There it is. We have multiple pages in our bill that excludes politicians and a laundry list, lobbyists, family members. We have a long exclusion list that says, nope, sorry. Now look, you're going to say we get, the politicians, of course, naysay this immediately. But what we're trying to do is, and have learned, is that other states are doing this right now to varying effects. Now, when we started this, I'll tell you a quick story. Our first rollout of reform legislation was in 2018. We got 110 legislators, state reps, in 2018 to put their name on the bill, what are called co-sponsors. 110. 80 Ds and 30 Rs. There were, at the time, the Ds were way in the minority. Of course they're signing up. But what happened was we all got a number of Rs who signed up as well to say we can do this. But our problem was, among others, is that the majority party at the time, the Republicans, felt very comfortable where they were. And when it came time to get a hearing, we were this close to get a hearing with the so-called State Government Commission in Harrisburg, the chairperson, who was you've heard phrases like punchable face magazine or something. This guy had a punchable face. I'm not going to give you his name, but boy, he did. Anyway, he went on TV the one day, the first day of the hearing, and said, all right, the matter of, at the time it was called HB 22, we have this bill in front of us, and with 110 of 203 names, including 30 Rs. He said, this is what we're going to do with this bill. And he looked directly in the camera, his punchable face, and tore it in 2. Then he got it again and tore it, and then whoo, went like that. How's that for a wake-up call about how Harrisburg works? And then he said, oh, wait a minute. I have my reform bill. He went up and showed a blank piece of paper right into the camera and said, no, we're not going to reform. We like the way the process works right now. Welcome to Harrisburg politics. Naive, stupid, unaware. We were all of the above. We also made the grave mistake in 2018, that whole cycle of saying, well, we went out to Harrisburg and said, well, in California, now you tell me, Harrisburg, California, winning, anybody getting excited? If you go out there and say, well, in California, anyway, did we deserve a pie in the face? We deserved the pie in the face. At that point, it was a punchline. You have no chance. That's how naive we were. Now, granted, that wasn't me saying California, but it was others saying, we think this is a great idea. No, you can't be too progressive in Pennsylvania. It doesn't work. It simply doesn't work. So we've learned our lessons, many lessons, over the years. And what we're saying is take a closer look at what Michigan has done. Michigan, we think, is a lot closer to what Pennsylvania is like. Hardcore, tough, long-forgotten urban areas, minority majorities. leafy suburbs with lots of wealthy people, rural farm people or other people feeling excluded, universities with overeducated people. We got it all. A tourist industry much like us. So they're very, very similar numbers-wise. They're about 10 million, we're 13 million. So Michigan, this went down in Michigan, but they don't have to change the Constitution like we do. They're a referendum state, which meant they only needed to get X number of signatures to get it in front. And they got them, and they did it. And they put it together. And what we're saying is that, again, when we talk to legislators, you can't find, everybody is partisan. Everybody hates us, everybody this, everybody's that. And we're saying that's baloney. The reality is most people are blissfully ignorant of what's going in Harrisburg. They don't know who their state rep is. When I did my first couple events back in 2017, 2018, I would ask people, do you know who your state rep is? 95% of people did not. Do you know who your state senator is? 95% of people did not know who their state senator was. Do you know your person is your congressperson in Washington? Sorry to say, about 75% of folks had no clue. And I always tell the one story. When I first came up, we were doing, it was in Pennsburg. Do you know where Pennsburg is? Pennsburg is right at the corner of Montgomery County. It's right over there, and you're way down there, and right at the southwest tip of Lehigh County. And it was the first trip up there. It's very traditional Republican, and we were just curious. We're up there. I'm getting yelled at or barked at occasionally, and that's okay. But I would ask people, do you know who your congressperson is? And the one woman, bless her heart, signed our petition, but she hesitated, is not sure. Is it still Arlen Specter? Now, Arlen Specter had been dead at least 10 years, if nothing more. And I said, no. All he said was, let it down. I said, good answer, like a game show or something. But no, it's not Arlen. Arlen covers somewhere else. We're looking for a graceful descent here. So I did let her know at the time who her congressperson was. But at least she tried. Most folks have no clue. She knew a name, and that's right. But this is our problem, is that there are we believe tens of thousands of people who would be interested. And what we're talking about with this commission is that it's to be on the commission, and we'll save the questions toward the end. It's a very doable job. Let's go to the next slide. All right, so that's the independent commission. And then the next thing is, you can see the other two big deals is transparency. This is a public commission. There's no reason not to be on the internet 24/7. Tell us what you're doing at all times. Where are you? What are you working on? What documents are you reading? What testimony are you taking? What decisions are you making? What maps are you drawing? Make it total transparency. Not a problem. Everyone kind of says, okay, that sounds cool. And then the last one down below is prioritize mapping criteria. At the top of that list, which means, think of it, it's up on the wall. Here's the prioritized rules that you must follow. And that includes the Voting Rights Act, of course, but it also includes some other basic rules and laws in Pennsylvania. And we'll do our best with the compact, contiguous, all those other adjectives that you saw back in the commission, in the Constitution. This will replace the Constitution. What we're talking about is changing our PA Constitution. So it's hard. But this is the three legs that we're pitching. All the legislators we've talked to, including the Lehigh Valley, blah, 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 independent, yeah, that's great. Prioritize mapping rules, yeah, that sounds great. Now, who's on that committee? So when you think about what do legislators really care about? Who's on that committee if I voted for it? And we get the final say on the maps anyway, right? And the answer is no. This commission is the only final say for both congressional and Harrisburg State Senate, State Rep maps. So show of hands, how many think your legislators would love that idea? So what are we really talking about here? We're talking about particularly the 1% giving up power when it comes to drawing the maps. Enthusiasm levels from the leadership for the 1%? Not so high. Pretty damn low. How about 0%? Because you're asking them to give up power. So our approach is the only way we can do it. And let me be very clear, in the House and in the Senate in Harrisburg, leadership in the House, Republican and Democrat, aren't fans. Leadership in the Harrisburg Senate, R&D, they're not fans because we're taking power away and giving it to regular folks. Next slide, Charles. We're almost done. There's a lot of blah, blah, blah here, so don't worry about it. All I'm saying is if nothing changes, it's going to be more of the same. Some of the stories that I told you. Whether it's a Goofy kicking Donald, whether it's 2 senators disappearing for 3 days to draw the maps, it's all the same. And that's why we go, when we're talking to your state legislators, or trying to talk to your Lehigh Valley state legislators, we keep coming back with the one question. We don't know, in 2030, 2031, we've mentioned already the outside influence of the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. The shift in some areas of the state, such as the Lehigh Valley, in some areas more purple, more D, more R, whatever it may be, we really don't know how it's going to go down. Pennsylvania, we've proven to be somewhat purplish when you look at year to year to year. In 2022, when the new maps first came into place, the Pennsylvania House was 113 to 90, R to D, 23 seats, R to D. When the maps came into play for the 22 state House elections, the Democrats won the majority. They have the majority in Pennsylvania, Harrisburg right now, in the House of 102 to 101. Nobody saw that coming. I had lunch in October before the elections with a gentleman, our state rep named Matt Bradford. Does anybody know that name? Matt Bradford. Pretty consistent. Matt Bradford is the majority leader in the Pennsylvania House. He's in Montgomery County. And he was absolutely influential in drawing the maps. And he is absolutely influential in drawing the future maps. He's just going to be. He is a player, and he's close by. And what we're saying, and when I asked him, this October before the November elections, I asked Matt, what do you think the new maps in place for the State House mean for that 113 to 90 count right now? He thought the Ds might pick up 6 seats. They picked up 12. And they took the majority and held it in 2024. Interesting times right now. So that's why partly what happened in 2024 in the PA House got national attention. We have 3 judicial elections, they're called retention elections, for 3 of the 7 Pennsylvania Supreme Court justices who are absolutely directly involved in placing the 5th person on that LRC 5-person commission. And they also are the court of final appeal when the other side is upset and want them to say, throw the maps out and use these maps instead. They, whether they want to be or not, are absolutely critical players as well. So that's what's happening right now, and you need to be prepared. And what we're talking to legislators, we ask them the same question. 2030, 31 census, new maps. Nobody, because it's true, nobody has a clue who will be in the majority in the PA House, in the PA Senate, and probably on the Supreme Court. 3 seats on the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. It's a retention election in November. Lots of money is already pouring into Pennsylvania on those 3. That's a yes, no. Do you want these 3 judges who we have never heard of before to retain their seat for the next 10 years? Yes, no. Historically, 95% of the time, the answer is yes. Oh, I guess they're doing okay. And away we go. The reality is the money's already pouring in, and be prepared for an onslaught of noise to make it very, very tough when it comes time for that election.
If I remember correctly, all 3 up for retention, as you said, that's 3 out of 7, half the court. All 3 are in the same party.
Yeah, they're labeled Ds. Yeah,
It's going to gear up from the other party.
that's right.
And
Well,
opposition.
yeah, and both, I'll simply say this, when we talk to Ds, House Ds, at least 4 of them have told me, you people shouldn't be worried about this. You should be out there advocating to keep those Democrats on the Supreme Court. And I'm a wise guy. I said, hang on, let me write that down. I said, so we're working on the wrong thing. We need to be working to retain Democratic legislators. He wasn't going to sponsor our bill anyway, so what the hell. But this is what they care about. It's a big deal. It's a stealth election, but it's a big deal. Next slide. So what we're saying is nobody knows. So why not sign up for our reforms and take it out of the politician's hand? If you're worried about your career, either in the House or in the Senate, here goes. So there's our, somebody help me out? What were the bill names?
31 and 131.
There's some letters there too. Don't forget that. Everything else you can forget. All right, HB 31, SB 131. Thank you. These are your people. These are the people you smiled when you voted, frowned when the election results came in, or tore up your ballot, or if you didn't get one at all, you just checked out. On the Senate side, here's your 3 senators. Jared Coleman replaced and beat Pat Brown in a primary in 2022. Young guy at the time, he was a world beater. He was against everything, anti-establishment type. It was almost the Groucho Marx. I think it's Duck Soup, but I'm not sure. He had a song. Whatever it is, I'm against it. That's Pat. That was the opponent of Pat Brown. Whatever they're doing, I'm against it. That was then. That was then. He and Jarrett came in after the new maps came down. Pretty safe district. He's going to be around. So he's a not yet right now. Nick Miller is a yes. He did co-sponsor. Nick covers a big chunk of Allentown, northern parts of it, and into Northampton County as well. And then Lisa Boscola. Lisa's pretty cynical at this point, but she is, she gave her name to it. Now we're working with a tough crowd in the Senate, I simply say. I can simply tell you that Senate leadership on the Republican side, they're not fans of what we're doing. I'll be nice and say it's not fans. Our bills also then go through a committee. All bills are assigned to a committee. This is the state government committee in the House and in the Senate. And the friendly gentleman on the Senate who's chair of that state government committee, his name is Chris Dush from upstate New York. Not a fan. That's all we'll say at this point. But this is where we are on the Senate side. We are focused first on the House. We're focused first on the House. I will simply tell you this. Currently, in the state Senate, we have 19 co-sponsors, 19 of 50. We think we can get a couple more. That includes 2 Republicans who went against their party wishes, one of whom is Tracy Pennicook. Tracy covers northern Montgomery County and Lower Berks. This is, and Lower Berks is very Republican, and that's cool. She lost Montgomery County in the 2022 election, but got enough balance in Berks County to give her a 52-48 result. But she signed up real fast. She's worried. She's worried. She doesn't want to, she was outflanking us. But 19 of 50 is pretty good for where we are right now on the Senate side. And we think we've got at least 3 or 4 more who might help. But Jared Coleman is not one of them. Does anyone here live or know that Jared Coleman is your state senator? He's Western Lehigh County. Anyone planning to move? Actually, we could use a lot more help up in Tioga and Potter County. I didn't come to be laughed at. I'm coming to get a for sale sign on your property. We could really use some help. So anyway, that's on the Senate side, but I want you to focus a little bit more here and see how are we doing on the state rep side. Some yeses. Again, this is through the fine work of Charles and Lehigh Valley constituents, Terry Shattini. We have a number of folks who have been busting their butt to get meetings, to talk to your state reps, to make this happen. And what's interesting here is it hasn't been easy. A couple signed up relatively quickly. A few who had supported us in the past took some work, right, Charles? Between Mr. Schweier and a few others. Jeannie McNeil was pretty quick. Steve Samuelson has an asterisk. Steve is Bethlehem in Northampton. He is a prime sponsor. He's been throwing this on the barbecue, if you will, since 2008. Varied. So he keeps coming back every 2 years. All right, folks, I know this is the time. It's going to work, you know. But he's a prime sponsor. And we also have a Republican prime sponsor, a gentleman named Mark Gillen from Berks County, who has his name there. But we only have like 3 or 4 Republicans right now. We have 54 state reps, names next to the bill. We don't need 203. We could use 102, and we win the day. We just need 50.1%, and we win. So we've got work to do, but we have R's and D's from both sides in the House who are sitting there, let's talk about something else, you know, who really don't want to put it. D's in particular, I'll be very, very explicit. Democratic leadership in the House, Speaker McClinton, Majority Leader Matt Bradford, Caucus Leader Mike Schlossberg are, I'm being nice by saying not yet. They're a no. They're a no today. Does anyone know if Mike Schlossberg is your state rep? He is Allentown. But if you don't know, a little exercise you can go through on your phone after I'm done is Google, who is my state rep? Actually, the state has a very nice site that you can go in and pick your county, even type in your address, and say, who is my state rep? And they will give you who's your state rep, who's your state senator, who's your congressperson. But right now, on the D side, and the Ds are in control of the Pennsylvania House, they are driving the legislation, and leadership is not with us at this point. So of the 51 state rep Democrats, we have not one as part of leadership. Not one. Because we must think they have a chance, they believe, that come 2030, 2031, with the friendly Supreme Court and the fact that the Democrats held the state house in a year where the R's won in Pennsylvania, the presidency and the Senate, the U.S. Senate, and turnout for Democrat side was abysmal, frankly, abysmal. That we still have, somehow the maps have some magic there. They held amidst that wave. It held, and maybe it gets only better. And Lehigh Valley becomes an interesting target zone for that. But this is where we are right now. So we're a mixed bag. We don't have any Republicans from Lehigh Valley, all right? So what's happening now is Charles and team are looking for help wherever we can get it, all right?
Yeah, so I arrange constituent meetings with the representatives, but it's helpful to have somebody who's a constituent. Mm-hmm. So I've reached out to a couple of these folks several times, not in. And my next step is to get the constituent request or multiple constituent request, and then I'm there to meet with them. Yep. So that's how that works out.
Yep.
We're trying to do that in Bethlehem Township in particular, Joe Emery, if anybody's...
Joe is tough. Joe is tough.
List out in front that if you would like to sign up and get our newsletter, and there's a checkbox for volunteer if you'd like to volunteer.
Yeah. Yep.
But that's one of them we're trying to work on. Representative Ann Flood is like Forks Township on Northwood.
Okay.
And met with Zach Mako already. Planning
One
to
slide.
Jared Coleman also. So we might, help would be welcome on that. And we're close to meeting with Mike Schlossberg, and I think
we may with him again. We don't need all of them, but we need a couple reps. And I think also Charles and I will talk. We'd like to take another crack at Mylu McKenzie. Mylu is her son is your congressperson most likely. So, but Mylu is another one that we're interested in. So.
What are the 2 asterisks next to Schlossberg? He used to be ours. We have to remove it out.
Yeah, it just means that he's on the leadership. He's part of the leadership group. There's 7 Democrats in the House who everything funnels through. All legislation funnels through that leadership group, and we're 0 for 7 with that group, including 3 who used to sponsor us. Yeah, so that's what we want. So one more page, and I think we're done, right? I'll just finish up. And that's it. So here's the variety of ways. I do want you to get Charles's, if you can sign up or get Charles's email address. We could use some help. We could just use some help, particularly for those. I think Joe Emmerich is winning 51.5% the last 2 election cycles. He's nervous, but he hasn't been responsive when trying to get a meeting. And we just want we want the legislators to know about it. We want them to be uncomfortable. And the only way that works is that they hear from constituents, not from outsiders.
Does the mayor have any,
Nope. No, I mean, if you know somebody who's friends politically, maybe it helps, but then that person has to be on board with this kind of thing. But anyone who's into politics, electoral office as a career, it's going to take a hard stand one way or the other. How do I benefit from this? So you have to know that first. But we want folks who know that this current process, controlled by a couple of people, stinks. And there's a better way. I don't know. I can't speak for them. You have to find out and ask. It doesn't hurt. You got nothing to lose. But yeah, we think there's everything to gain. So, all right. So this is how we can help. Fair Districts PA is our website. If you need more, Charles James is available 24/7, I think, the last time I talked. If he's not at another music festival. But the
Newsletter out regularly.
Yep.
So when you sign up, you'll get that. We don't sell that.
It's a great way.
So you can stay in touch with that. The website's really good as well, so you can see what's going on with other actions you might want to take. If you don't sign here, this shows support also.
Yep.
That you support the idea of an independent commission to draw those districts instead of the politicians drawing the line.
Yep.
So, having numbers helps us, so you sign up there or online, that helps.
And we don't ask for money. We don't ask for money. That's who we are. That's what we do. I'm out of time, so I hope this was helpful. Look at our website. Check in with Charles again. By add your name to the petition, we're not going to belabor you, but it gets you connected with Charles. All right, and Charles has the information of what's happening and the things we're trying to get done up in Lehigh Valley. Okay? We're done. Thank you.
We have like 10 minutes. I don't know if you want to do it.
We'll take some questions.
Okay.
Who has questions? Or who has objections? Talk about this. Remember, it's okay to forget. Go ahead, question, please.
Well, 2 questions. First of all, as a former constituent of Schlossberg, is it worthwhile for us to try and reach out to him? Okay. And I'd also kind of like to know why he's against it, because he seems pretty,
Well, he has co-sponsored us, our bills.
yeah, yeah.
Come on, this is an easy one. Why is he hesitant now?
Now he has
leadership now.
power, yeah.
He's in the majority. And he takes instructions as well. Remember I told you before, Speaker McClinton, disappointingly, at least at this point, not excited about it. She was in the old days when they were in the minority. And now they're sending vibes out. You don't want to do this. Matt Bradford has been a long-time majority leader for the Democrats in the House. He's my problem because he's in Montgomery County. But he has been opposed since day one. He's an old-time politician. We either win or we lose. And we don't need outside agitators to tell us how to run our business. So once you're in leadership, either get with the program or we'll find somebody else. That's life, being on the team. But we need Mike Schlossberg. We need him. We need the breakthrough. I don't know the man. I met him once as part of a small group. I wasn't overly impressed, but that's just me. But the idea is we need to break the ice a little bit here. But all I'm suggesting is take a look, write a letter. It's okay. It can't hurt. Former constituent. The phrase we like, or that I ask people to use, is surprised and disappointed. Surprised and disappointed. They used to co-sponsor our bills. What's changed?
So we do encourage you to reach out, call,
Yep.
write letters.
Please do. Be heard. Because remember what I said at the beginning, that only about 1% of the electorate for state legislators ever makes contact. It's true. About 1%. They just sail along. They focus on the agenda, they focus on, who are the donors. Now, if you're cutting a check for 5 or 10 grand, then the fact you're a non-constituent may get you a little more attention. But that's how it kind of works. They're not, it's just how it is. They're not bad people, and this is the rules that they operate on. But that's kind of how it is. Any other questions? You don't want to remember? You don't have to remember what the LRC means. It's just, like I said, I don't want to use cliches like it's rigged and all that other nonsense. But the system, the way it's set up right now, is not set up for, it's not really very much a democratic process. We think there's a better way. It's worked in other states to varying degrees. We think it can work in PA. We're purple. Lehigh Valley is the perfect embodiment. It really is, of Pennsylvania. When you look at Pennsylvania in total, we're very purple. It's very red or very blue, depending on, point A or point B, but in aggregate, it's very purple.
The folks who wrote the Legislative Reapportionment Commission in 1968
yeah.
really thought they were, and they were,
Yeah, they were.
making progress, because
Yeah, and they
before
did.
that it was a purely
It
legislative
was,
system.
yeah.
So they really
But-
thought they had
But
moved.
I heard it said once, and I said, it's probably true. 1968, I was a kid, and the men, the white men who were drawing that, drew up this. They were actually, think about it, they had a lot of common experiences. These were men born from 1900 into the 1920s. They had 2 wars, maybe Korea 3. They had communism, they had the Depression. They had a ton. These were our maybe fathers and grandfathers who had a ton of common experiences, and there wasn't that need. In today's world, where it's so polar, we don't share. The common experience is less so, particularly in the last 10 years where social media can isolate us. So yeah, it worked then, maybe, but it doesn't work today.
I'm not sure it ever
Prospects.
worked, but
Yeah,
they were
prospects
making
are not,
progress, yeah.
They were men of good intentions.
Men and women, and it was a constitutional convention, it wasn't just the
Yeah, and actually the
legislature.
convention, when I looked it up, I said, geez, I didn't know that. They were actually reforming the judiciary system in Pennsylvania, because that must have been really screwed up. So they created a whole new set of structures, local, all the way up to just below the Supreme Court. Pretty cool stuff. Oh, by the way, we got 3 days to work on redistricting. Get in here, we'll come up with something new. So this is what they came up with. It was good then for a couple days, and it's terrible right now. When we explain it to people, when I explain it to people, like wherever we go, we usually get mostly just faces. Really? Yeah, that's how it works? Particularly the fact that it's controlled by a couple of people. Terrible. You've never been gerrymandered? Life is cool. We have big parts of Pennsylvania are safe, Party A or Party B, they just are. But our Lehigh Valley is not. Lehigh Valley is one of the battlegrounds, and it's going to continue to be. It just is.
So,
Congratulations.
so I do want to say, I'm not sure, is this on? Okay. So is one thing we're asking the legislators to do is not just co-sponsor, but also to try to make sure this gets a committee vote and then a House floor vote, and we want the same thing over in the Senate as well. Is there some progress in getting a committee vote in the House?
There's a little bit of progress. You have the woman who's in charge of the House State Government Committee. She's Representative Carol Hill Evans. She's the chairperson. And the way things work in Harrisburg is the chairperson, if they want to be, is uber powerful. Remember the tearing things up? Didn't need any input. They just tear it up or say, no, we're not going to deal with that bill. Throw it on the shelf. We're going to work on this stuff. And remember the pressure, the downward pressure from the leadership of that particular party, majority party. So yes, we did. We had folks from New York City who met with her, who she agreed to try to get a hearing. That's a big deal. She's going to take a lot of crap from her leadership, perhaps even from Mr. Schlossberg. I don't know. What she couldn't guarantee was a committee vote. That's how much pressure she's under from her leadership, who think, again, that maybe because we survived and kept a majority in 2024, that it's only going to we have a chance to build on that one-seat majority going forward. That's a high-risk proposition. But we're going to get the hearing. We're 55% confident that will happen.
the news at a federal level is of the opinion that it's time to fight fire with fire. So maybe this isn't the time to be pushing this,
Yeah,
because at a federal level,
not
it's,
we don't think it's helpful. What you're referring to is your president dictating to Texas and a few other states that are comfortably red that, no. Texas provides 28 seats to Washington in the House. Give me 35. So the only way to do that is to draw the maps in such a way to give me 7 more, 5 more. They
yeah, but if you
get
know
easy.
the other side isn't going to,
Well, what are you going to do? I mean,
Yeah.
it's what the Wall Street Journal article said, cynical politics at its worst. It's worse
Yeah.
than cynical.
Yeah.
It's as anti-democracy as it gets. That one guy instructs the governor to instruct the House, the Texas House in Austin, to redraw the maps. Actually, you're down in Austin, and you don't know Austin. He goes to Austin, just if you could lean into those friendly types. But that's what we don't want. That's at its worst, an abuse. And no one, if they're not paying attention.
but we also don't want to lose democracy. And if we're going to lose democracy over it,
But we can't, to be very honest with you, this is state by state.
Yeah.
Our Supreme Court, Washington Federal Supreme Court said, this gerrymandering, this redistricting, this is a state issue. Do
So-
not bring any more cases
So
like
that's,
this.
and it's extreme. What gerrymandering is creating minority rule, right? Because you've seen North Carolina as an example where they've had a couple of Democratic governors, but they've been able to keep the state legislature Republican. And if the population is fairly balanced statewide, so should your representatives, but it's upside down. So, when you're encouraging, like California, then, they're responding to Texas. We're going to gerrymander now. It's just more of the same kind of misdoing. So it's still creating the exaggeration of your representation, or, maybe they had a little bit of a lead, but they want more. So it's not really giving the citizens the right to vote. It also creates these districts that don't have to really respond to their constituents, because they're in an area that's so much lopsided to their side, it doesn't matter. You're not having to worry about losing control.
That's exactly right. And that's why we keep going back to Pennsylvania. We can't do anything about Texas or California. We're a constitution. We have to change our constitution to change this process. So, you don't pull your hair out over Texas. It sucks. There's no other word for it. Particularly because I know New York wants to queue it up. There's a number of, both sides are saying, okay, the hell with it. Let's have at it. This is what we want. Let's do it. And it's your government at its worst. I think that's it. We're good.